The ship that refused to die. The discovery in the graveyard. The salvage crew of the Merchant's Hope had seen thousands of dead ships in the Forgotten Reach. This sector of space was where vessels came to die, pulled into the gravity well of 3 collapsed stars that formed a slow, patient trap. Captain Velrus, a 6-armed Kolthari with silver scales and eyes like polished amber, stood before the observation window, watching another wreck drift past. Her crew worked efficiently behind her, scanning for anything worth the risk of retrieval. "Captain," called out Jinx, her navigator. The young Phyrexian's blue skin flickered with excitement, the bioluminescent patterns across his face pulsing faster. "I'm picking up something unusual." Sector 9, Grid 47. Velrus turned, her middle arms crossing thoughtfully. "Define unusual." "It's a ship. Old. Really old. But the reactor signature, it's still active." The bridge fell silent. Active reactors didn't exist in the Forgotten Reach. Everything here was dead, stripped, or about to become debris. Velrus moved to the scanner display, her lower arms working the controls while her upper arms gestured commands to the crew. The image resolved slowly. A massive vessel, easily 3 times the size of their salvage ship, hung in the void. Its hull was dark, scarred by centuries of micro-impacts and radiation, but the basic structure remained intact. The design was unlike anything in their databases, angular where most ships curved, brutal where others flowed. It looked less like a vessel and more like a weapon given form. "Run it through identification," Velrus ordered. The computer worked for several minutes, searching through every known ship design in galactic history. Finally, text appeared on the screen, and Jinx read it aloud, his voice trembling slightly. "Human. Design origin, Earth. Classification, warship. Estimated age, 1200 years. The impossible signal." The crew exchanged glances. Everyone knew about humans. They were the ghost story of the galaxy, the civilization that had burned too bright and died in a war so terrible that most species refused to speak of it. The war had ended 12 centuries ago when humanity's enemies, a coalition of 6 species who feared human expansion, had destroyed Earth and every human colony in a campaign that lasted only 3 years. Since then, human ships occasionally appeared in the Forgotten Reach, pulled in by the gravity well like every other piece of space debris. But they were always dead, their reactors cold, their crews long gone. "This one's different," Velrus said quietly. "That reactor shouldn't be running. Nothing can maintain power for 12 centuries. Tarek, her engineer, a massive, rock-like being from Stoneheart Prime, rumbled his response. "Captain, recommend we leave. Human ships from that era were designed for war. If something's still active in there, it might have defense systems." Velrus considered this. Tarek was right, of course. But the salvage value of an intact human warship would be enough to retire her entire crew. And something deeper pulled at her, curiosity about the species that had once challenged the entire galaxy. "We're going in," she decided. "But carefully. Tarek, prepare a boarding team. Jinx, keep scanning for any sign of weapons activation. If that ship so much as twitches in our direction, we jump out immediately." Inside the ghost ship. The Merchant's Hope docked with the human vessel through an emergency airlock. The hull was thick, designed to withstand punishment that would shred most modern ships. When Velrus's boarding team stepped through, their suit lights cut through absolute darkness. The corridor stretched ahead, wide enough for 3 of Velrus to walk side by side. Human lettering marked the walls, most of it faded but some still readable through their translators. Deck 7 Engineering Access Authorized Personnel Only. "The air is breathable," Jinx reported, checking his scanner. "Gravity at 73% galactic standard. Temperature stable. And Captain, life support is active." Velrus felt a chill run through her scales. "That's impossible." They moved deeper into the ship. The team's lights revealed evidence of the vessel's final battle. Blast marks scarred the walls. In some sections, the hull had been patched with emergency sealant that had hardened centuries ago. They passed what had been crew quarters, personal effects still floating in zero gravity where the grav plates had failed. Then they heard it. A sound like breathing, mechanical but rhythmic, coming from somewhere ahead. "Weapons ready," Velrus commanded. Her crew drew their plasma cutters, the closest thing to weapons they carried. They followed the sound to a sealed door marked, "Cryogenic Storage, Medical Bay." Tarek forced the door open with his massive strength. The room beyond made everyone stop. The last soldier. 12 cryogenic pods lined the walls, their glass covers frosted but intact. 11 were dark, their occupants visible as shadows behind the ice. But the 12th pod glowed with a soft blue light, and inside, suspended in preservation gel, was a human. He was tall, taller than Velrus despite humans being known as a smaller species. His body was lean but heavily muscled, built like a weapon. Scars crossed his arms and chest, visible even through the gel. His face was hard, angular, with short dark hair graying at the temples. He looked to be in his 40s by human reckoning, though he might have been in that pod for centuries. "Still alive," Jinx whispered, checking his scanner. "Brain activity. Heartbeat at 2 beats per minute. He's in deep stasis, but viable." Velrus approached the pod slowly. A control panel beside it flickered with alien script. Her translator struggled with the ancient human language before finally rendering it readable. "CPO Marcus Cole, serial number 2847-9356 MC, status, critical suspension, do not wake except in case of enemy contact." "Do not wake," Tarek repeated. "Captain, we should leave him." But Velrus was reading more of the display. Medical information scrolled past, treatments administered, wounds healed, augmentations installed. This human had been dying when they put him in the pod. The ship's medical system had spent centuries repairing him, using the last of its power to keep one crew member alive while the rest died. Why him, she wondered aloud. Why save just one? Jinx pointed to additional text appearing on the display. "It says he was the ship's Master Chief. The highest-ranking enlisted crew member. The system chose him because..." He paused, reading carefully. "Because he had the highest probability of completing the ship's final mission." "What mission?" Velrus asked. Before anyone could answer, alarms screamed throughout the derelict. Red lights flickered to life along the corridor. The breathing sound they'd heard earlier grew louder, faster, and Velrus realized it wasn't mechanical at all, it was the ship itself, waking up. The cryopod's display changed, text scrolling rapidly, automated defense protocol activated, unauthorized personnel detected, waking designated survivor. The awakening. Velrus backed away from the pod as frost began sublimating from its surface. "Everyone out. Now." But Tarek had already sealed the door behind them, trapping the team inside. "Captain, the ship locked us in. We can't override it." The pod opened with a hiss of ancient hydraulics. Preservation gel drained away, and the human inside drew his first breath in 1200 years. His eyes snapped open, cold, gray, and immediately aware. He saw the alien crew surrounding him and moved faster than any of them expected. Within seconds, he'd grabbed Jinx by the throat and slammed Tarek against the wall. Velrus found herself pinned, with the human's other hand wrapped around 2 of her arms. His strength was impossible, he was holding 3 crew members immobile with casual efficiency. "Where am I?" he demanded, his voice rough from centuries of disuse. "What ship is this?" Velrus forced herself to remain calm. "Your ship. The..." She glanced at the designation on the wall, the Defiant's last stand. "You've been in cryo-sleep. We're a salvage crew. We mean no harm." The human's eyes narrowed, scanning them one by one. His grip didn't loosen, but something shifted in his expression, confusion replacing aggression. "Salvage crew? What species are you?" "I'm Kolthari." "He's Threxian. The big one is from Stoneheart Prime." "Please, we're not your enemies." "My enemies," Marcus repeated slowly. Then his face hardened again. "The Coalition. Where are they? How long was I under? Velrus swallowed. The war ended 1200 years ago. Earth. I'm sorry, but Earth is gone. All the human colonies are gone. You're the only one we've found alive. For a long moment, Marcus just stared at her. Then, slowly, his grip loosened and he stepped back. His legs nearly gave out, 12 centuries of disuse catching up despite the pod's medical care. He caught himself against a wall, breathing hard. 1200 years, he whispered. And you're salvaging my ship. He looked at Velrus, and she saw something break behind his eyes. What happened to my crew? She gestured to the dark pods. The other pods failed. You were the only one the medical system could save. It spent centuries keeping you alive. Marcus walked to the nearest dark pod and placed his hand against the frosted glass. Through it, they could see a woman, forever frozen, forever young. Lieutenant Sharma, he said quietly. Best pilot I ever served with. He moved to the next. Corporal Rodriguez. Saved my life on Titan Station. He touched each pod, speaking names, telling stories of people who'd been dead for longer than most civilizations had existed. When he reached the end, he stood there in silence. Finally, he turned back to Velrus. You said you're not my enemies. Prove it. Tell me what happened after we fell. Tell me what the galaxy became. The truth of what came after. They moved to the ship's bridge, where the Defiant's last stand's ancient systems flickered to life at Marcus's presence. The command chair recognized him, adjusting to his height and activating displays that hadn't shown information in centuries. Velrus explained as gently as she could. The coalition had destroyed humanity, yes, but the victory had cost them everything. The war had been so brutal, so total, that 3 of the 6 coalition species had gone extinct from the casualties. The remaining 3 had never recovered. The galaxy had spent the next 1,000 years in a dark age, technology regressing, civilizations fragmenting. They thought humans were too dangerous to exist, Velrus said. They said your species expanded too fast, fought too hard, refused to accept limits. So they made an example of you. Marcus listened without expression. When she finished, he turned to the main view screen and activated external cameras. The Forgotten Reach spread before them, thousands of dead ships from dozens of species, all pulled into the same slow death spiral. And now, he asked. What's the galaxy like now? Careful, Velrus answered honestly. Everyone remembers the war. Everyone knows the cost of pushing too hard. We trade, we salvage, we survive. But we don't expand. We don't explore. We don't dream of anything beyond what we have. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke, his voice carrying the weight of 12 centuries. My species died fighting to reach the stars. And you're telling me the galaxy learned the wrong lesson. You learned to fear ambition instead of to embrace it wisely. Before Velrus could respond, the ship's alarms blared again. Jinx rushed to a console, his skin flashing alarm colors. Captain. Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. They're broadcasting coalition identification codes. That's impossible, Velrus said. The coalition hasn't existed for 1,000 years. Marcus moved to the tactical display with practiced ease. His fingers danced across controls that responded to him like the ship had been waiting all this time. When the incoming vessels resolved on the screen, Velrus understood. They weren't original coalition ships. They were new vessels, built in the old style, carrying the old symbols. And they were arming weapons. They found me, Marcus said quietly. After all this time, they're still afraid. A transmission cut through the static. Human vessel, you are ordered to surrender. Your species is extinct. Your existence is a violation of galactic law. Stand down or be destroyed. Marcus looked at Velrus. Get your crew off my ship. This isn't your fight. But Velrus surprised herself. She'd spent her life scavenging the bones of the past, but looking at this human, the last of his kind, still standing, still fighting, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Hope. No, she said firmly. The galaxy needed to remember what you were. Maybe it's time we learned again. Marcus studied her, then slowly smiled, the first real emotion she'd seen from him. Then strap in, Captain. Because this ship might be 1,200 years old, but she was built to do one thing. He pressed a sequence of commands, and throughout the Defiant's last stand, ancient systems roared to life. Weapon ports opened. Shields flickered into existence. The engines, silent for centuries, began to burn. She was built to fight, Marcus finished. And I'm not done yet. When the dead ship remembered war. The impossible equation. The Defiant's last stand shouldn't have been able to move. Every system aboard the ship was ancient, running on technology that had been obsolete for 1,000 years. But Marcus Cole's fingers moved across the controls like he'd never left, and the old warship responded. All crew to combat stations, he commanded, his voice carrying through the intercom with automatic authority. Then he glanced at Belris. Sorry. Force of habit. I don't actually have a crew. You have us, Belris said. She activated her comm. Jinx, can you interface with their navigation systems? The young Threxian was already at the helm station, his fingers flying across the human controls. It's actually working. The ship's computer is ancient, but it's responding. Captain Marcus, your AI is asking me for crew credentials. Override Protocol Alpha 7, Marcus replied. Tell her they're temporary emergency replacements. A feminine voice echoed through the bridge, synthetic but warm. Acknowledged. Welcome aboard, temporary crew. I am Athena, Automated Tactical and Harmonics Executive Network Assistant. It's been 1,217 years since I've had anyone to talk to besides myself. Forgive me if I'm a little rusty. Despite everything, Belris found herself smiling. Your AI has a personality? Humans program personality into everything, Marcus said. We get lonely otherwise. He pulled up the tactical display. 6 ships were moving into attack formation, each one larger than the Defiant's last stand and equipped with modern weapons. Athena, give me options. Running combat simulations now. Based on current ammunition stores, which are at 17%, shield capacity, which is at 42%, and the fact that I haven't fired a weapon in over a millennium, I estimate our chances of survival at approximately 3%. I've beaten worse odds, Marcus muttered. No, you haven't, Athena replied cheerfully. I've reviewed your service record. Your best odds were 15% during the Battle of Proxima Station. You nearly died 3 times. But I didn't die, Marcus said. That's what matters. The first strike. The lead coalition vessel fired first. A beam of coherent plasma cut through space, powerful enough to vaporize most modern ships. Marcus reacted instantly, his hands moving across the controls. The Defiant's last stand twisted sideways with surprising grace, the beam passing within meters of the hull. Tarek, Marcus called out. I need you in engineering. This ship has a manual override for the reactors. If I'm right, you're strong enough to operate it. The massive stone-like being rumbled his acknowledgement and headed for the engineering deck. Marcus gave him quick directions, speaking in the calm, precise tone of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. The coalition ship spread into a wider formation, trying to flank them. Marcus studied their movements, and something cold entered his eyes. They're using the old coalition tactics. The same formations we fought against 1,200 years ago. Is that bad? Belris asked. For them? Yes. His fingers danced across the weapons console. Because I know exactly what they're going to do next. The Defiant's last stand accelerated suddenly, driving straight toward the center of the enemy formation. The coalition ships opened fire, their weapons converging on a single point. But Marcus had already calculated the timing. The old warship twisted and dove, and every shot passed through empty space where they'd been milliseconds before. Jinx, on my mark, full reverse thrust, Marcus commanded. That'll tear the inertial dampeners apart, the Threxian protested. That's why I said on my mark, not now. Athena, arm forward batteries. Forward batteries armed, the AI confirmed. Though I should mention that we only have enough ammunition for approximately 47 shots total. Then we'd better make them count. The coalition ships adjusted their formation, moving to surround them. Marcus waited, watching their positions shift on the tactical display. His eyes tracked patterns that Velrus couldn't see, calculating angles and trajectories with unconscious precision. Now, Jinx. The engines reversed at full power. The ship shuddered, alarm screaming as the dampeners struggled to compensate. But it worked, the Defiant's last stand stopped dead in space while the enemy formation continued forward, their momentum carrying them past. For exactly 2 seconds, all 6 coalition ships were perfectly aligned in front of Marcus's forward guns. Fire, he said quietly. The old way of war. The Defiant's last stand unleashed everything it had. Ancient railguns, each round accelerated to a fraction of light speed, tore through the lead ship's shields like paper. Plasma torpedoes followed, detonating against weakened armor. The ship tried to turn, tried to retreat, but it was too late. A chain reaction rippled through its power core, and it exploded in a bloom of light. The remaining 5 vessels scattered, their formation broken. Marcus didn't give them time to regroup. He sent the Defiant's last stand diving below the plane of battle, an old human tactic from the days when space warfare was still finding its rules. Velrus, he said, his voice still calm despite the chaos, can your species handle high-G maneuvers? She flexed her 6 arms. Better than most. Why? Because I'm about to do something stupid. He pulled up a damage report. Athena, how many shots do we have left? 31 railgun rounds, 4 plasma torpedoes, and 1 nuclear warhead that I'm honestly surprised is still stable. And how many shots would it take to destroy those 5 ships? Assuming perfect accuracy? 43 shots minimum. Marcus smiled grimly. Then I guess I need to be better than perfect. He activated the comm to engineering. Tarek, I need you to manually overload the reactor core on my command. It'll cause a feedback pulse that'll destroy our shields, but it'll also create an electromagnetic wave that'll blind their sensors for about 3 seconds. And then what? Tarek's deep voice rumbled back. Then I shoot them while they can't see me shooting them. When Legends returned. What followed would be analyzed by military historians for generations. Marcus Cole, the last human soldier, fighting with a ship that should have been a museum piece, somehow managed to outthink, outfly, and outfight 5 modern warships. He used every trick in the human playbook, tactics that other species had forgotten or never fully understood. He fired projectiles on ballistic trajectories, letting them drift silently through space before activating their guidance systems at the last second. He used debris from the destroyed ship as improvised shields. He even rotated his ship to present damaged sections to the enemy, making them think he was more hurt than he actually was. The coalition ships fought back with superior firepower and numbers. But they were following doctrine, operating by the rules they'd been taught. Marcus was operating on instinct, creativity, and 1,200 years of stored rage. When the second ship exploded, the remaining 4 tried to retreat. Marcus didn't let them. The Defiant's last stand pursued, its ancient engines somehow keeping pace with modern drives. How are we keeping up with them? Jinx asked, amazed. Human military engineering, Marcus replied. We didn't build ships to be elegant. We built them to work when everything else had failed. Athena's voice cut in. Marcus, I should inform you that my structural integrity is at 19%. I'm detecting microfractures throughout the hull. If we take 1 more direct hit. Then we don't take 1 more direct hit. He pulled up a star chart. Velrus, do you know this sector? She studied the display. Those are the Thornback nebulae. Navigating them is nearly impossible. The electromagnetic interference destroys sensor accuracy. Marcus's smile was predatory. Good. Inside the storm, the Defiant's last stand plunged into the nebulae with the 4 coalition ships in pursuit. Immediately, all sensors went haywire. Delris's instruments showed ghosts, phantom returns, impossible readings. The nebulae's gas clouds glowed with their own light, creating a labyrinth of color and confusion. I can't see anything, Jinx reported, his bioluminescent patterns flickering in distress. Neither can they, Marcus said. Athena, switch to passive sensors only. And activate the manual tracking system. A mechanical scope rose from the command chair, the kind of analog targeting device that hadn't been used in centuries. Marcus pressed his eye to it, scanning the nebulae the old-fashioned way. There, he muttered. Thermal bloom. 12 degrees port. He adjusted course manually, not trusting the ship's computers in this environment. The Defiant's last stand drifted silently through the gas clouds, engines at minimal power. Through the scope, Marcus watched a coalition ship pass less than a kilometer away, completely unaware of their presence. He lined up the shot carefully, accounting for distance, drift, the target's vector. Then he fired. The railgun round crossed the gap in absolute silence. In space, there was no sound, no warning. The coalition ship simply erupted from within, its reactor breached by a projectile it never saw coming. 3 left. Marcus repeated the process twice more, each time using the nebulae's interference to hide their position. Each time, a coalition ship died without ever knowing what hit them. The 4th and final vessel must have realized what was happening because it fired wildly in all directions, hoping to hit something. Marcus waited until it exhausted its ammunition. Then he emerged from the gas clouds behind it and put a plasma torpedo through its engines. The ship went dead in space, helpless. He opened a channel. Coalition vessel, this is Master Chief Marcus Cole of the United Earth Defense Force. Your weapons are disabled. You have 2 choices, leave this sector and tell everyone you meet what happened here, or stay and become debris. Choose now. The response came after a long pause. You're 1 human. 1 ship. You cannot threaten the entire galaxy. You're right, Marcus agreed. But I don't need to threaten the entire galaxy. I just need to remind you what happens when you underestimate humanity. Go home. Tell them we're not as dead as they thought. Tell them that if they come looking for humans, they might find one. And that'll be enough. The coalition ship's engine sparked to life, and it limped away into hyperspace. The choice that defined everything. Back aboard the Merchant's Hope, Delris and her crew prepared to depart. The Defiant's last stand had been too damaged to follow. Marcus and Athena would need weeks to make basic repairs. But before leaving, Delris had to ask the question that had been burning in her mind. What will you do now? She asked Marcus. You're the last human alive. Your species is extinct. Your war is over. Marcus stood on the bridge of his battered ship, looking out at the forgotten reach. The war might be over, he said slowly, but being human isn't just about fighting. It's about refusing to give up. It's about looking at impossible odds and deciding to try anyway. He turned to face her. You said the galaxy spent the last 1200 years learning to be careful. Learning not to push too hard, not to dream too big. But what kind of existence is that? My species died, yes. But we died reaching for the stars. We died believing in something more. So what will you do? Delris pressed. Marcus looked at the tactical display, at the thousands of derelict ships floating in the void. I'm going to repair my ship. Then I'm going to find other survivors, other species who remember what it was like to dream. And I'm going to teach them what humanity taught the galaxy once before. What's that? That the universe doesn't care about your limits. That impossible is just a word. That one person, one ship, one moment of courage can change everything. He smiled. I'm going to remind the galaxy why they were afraid of us. Not because we were violent, but because we refused to accept that anything was truly impossible. Delris felt something stir in her chest. For years, she'd scavenged the past, living off the scraps of dead civilizations. But looking at Marcus, battered, alone, but unbroken, she saw something she'd forgotten existed. A future worth building. "Can I ask one more question?" she said. "Of course. Why did your ship save you? Out of all the crew, why you?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "The ship's computer logs say it's because I had the highest probability of completing the mission." "But the truth?" He gestured around the bridge, at the damage, the blood, the scars of 1,000 battles. "I think it's because I'm too stubborn to know when to quit. Every mission I ever ran, every battle I ever fought, someone told me it was impossible. And every time, I proved them wrong." He extended his hand toward her, an old human gesture of respect and partnership. "Thank you for waking me up, Captain Delris. You could have left me frozen. Instead, you gave me a second chance." Delris gripped his hand with two of hers, feeling the strength in his grasp. "Thank you for reminding me what bravery looks like. The galaxy needs more of it." As the Merchant's Hope undocked and jumped away, Delris watched the Defiant's last stand growing smaller in the distance. But she knew she'd see that ship again. Because Marcus Cole was right about one thing. Humans never knew when to quit. And maybe, just maybe, that was exactly what the galaxy needed. Epilogue, when news spread. 3 months later, the story began to spread through the trading posts and salvage stations. A human warship, active and fighting. A survivor from the old war, still alive after 12 centuries. The coalition species that had destroyed humanity denied it at first, called it a myth, a story told by scavengers who'd spent too long in space. But then the survivors from the coalition ships told their stories. About the derelict that wasn't dead. About the human who fought like he'd never stopped fighting. About tactics that should have been forgotten, used with a precision that spoke of a warrior born. And in the dark places of the galaxy, where dreams had been forgotten and ambition had died, something began to wake up. Other species heard the story and remembered their own histories. They remembered when they'd reached for the stars, before fear had taught them to stay small. They remembered what it felt like to believe in something more. And one by one, they began to move. Not toward war. Not toward destruction. But toward that dangerous, beautiful thing that humanity had embodied. Hope. Marcus Cole didn't know it yet, but by refusing to die, by refusing to accept that humanity's story was over, he'd done something remarkable. He'd reminded the galaxy how to dream again. And in a universe that had forgotten how to reach for the impossible, that was the most dangerous weapon of all.